No more money for rhinos. That was the message former President Donald Trump issued to his supporters yesterday as he encouraged his base to donate money to the Save America PAC instead of directly to the Republican Party.
What impact it's going to have on GOP fundraising and in the races to come? Democratic strategist and owner of JC Strategies, Jennifer Holdsworth-Karp, and Senior Director of Policy, Rachel Bovard. They join us now to discuss. Rachel, that sound you hear are all these Republican consultants in Washington setting their hair on fire, wondering how they're going to pay for their yachts and their second homes. But more seriously, what do you make of this? Because it is just a pretty big decision. And how is this going to impact Republican financing and the races in 2022?
Well, I don't think it's as big a deal as everyone's making it out to be, in the sense that, okay, Trump is like forming a super PAC. This is kind of what we expected. You know, we forget that after Citizens United, the party organizations themselves are not that powerful. The biggest player, for instance, in Republican Senate races is not the National Republican Senatorial Committee. It's Mitch McConnell's super PAC, the Senate Leadership Fund. And, you know, so I see this more as Trump taking on sort of those big institutional leadership PACs, which, again, aren't really getting money from, you know, small dollar donors anyway. They're getting money from Steve Schwartzman and Blackstone, you know, and billionaires and Paul Singer. So I don't necessarily think, you know, Trump's going to suck money away from that. But it is a flag. He's planting a flag, right? He's saying, I'm going to be involved in these races. But again, it comes down to who he endorses. His endorsements in the past haven't always been great. And so if this is just sort of a swampy, like, money changing hands for an endorsement situation, I think it's going to fail pretty spectacularly.
Yeah. What do you think, Jen? I mean, I'm not sure I actually accept that premise that the RNC and these other Republican arms of the Republican Party aren't getting grassroots donations, because we used to have the RNC Spock's on here all the time, and they were getting actually massive amounts of money, and some of it did come from the grassroots and small dollars. So, Jen, what do you make of the significance?
I think it's hilarious. I think that the grift is strong on this one. I think that the Republican Party is getting exactly what they deserve for supporting the likes of Donald Trump. I mean, I won't go into too much schadenfreude, because I think that the DNC has its own sins to answer for. But I just think that this is a way for Donald Trump to make more money, just like the Stop the Steal lie was. And somehow he's going to funnel it to his own children and his own businesses and the people who were right by him through this whole debacle of his presidency. So I think it was Lindsey Graham who said during the 2016 primaries that if Donald Trump was the nominee of the Republican Party, that he would destroy the party and that they would deserve exactly what they got. So here we are.
Well, so, you know, I know you're not as pessimistic there, Rachel. And this is you touched on something interesting, which is about the endorsement cycle itself. Can you give us any insight? I mean, I talked about this and just how incongruous Trump is. Like, this is what Trumpism means. And then he endorses like Jerry Moran and Tim Scott. And it's like, what?
Right.
These are completely the opposite. And these are, by the way, the only two people who's endorsed so far in the Senate race. So you're like, well, are you basically just going to endorse every establishment politician and just be like, this is the new Trump? Or are you actually going to do something with your brand? I think I probably have the answer to that. But what do you make in that context? What does this mean if he's going to be the interlocutor of the money?
Well, to your point, if he's just going to sort of stand up for incumbents, I don't see him as any different. He's just continuing to be a branch of the institutional GOP, and it's meaningless. And at that point, I actually kind of would agree with Jen that it's just grift at that point. But if Trump is going to come out and be someone who actually, you know, goes back to 2016 Trump and sort of focuses on those issues and invests in candidates that focus on issues that are heterodox to sort of, I think, where the GOP has always been, I think he could be a player here. But again, we haven't had a great history or a track record yet to rely on. Jerry Moran is not really making hearts flutter everywhere. So we'll see what happens.
Right. Speak for yourself, Rachel.
Yeah.
Jen, how important at this point? I mean, we had the whole theory of like the party decides and this idea that the party structures are super influential, extraordinarily powerful. I think we've seen actually more evidence of that on the Democratic side than, frankly, on the Republican side. They didn't want Trump, but Trump came in and now he is sort of like destroying them from the inside. How significant are these party organs? What do they really do? What role do they serve? And what does it matter whether or not they have money?
They're actually relatively weak, to your point before, especially with Citizens United. And actually, even before that, one of my frustrations with campaign finance law in this country is that a lot of the laws are designed to play gotcha with arbitrary limits rather than actually prevent meaningful money from flowing through the system. And every time we pass a campaign finance law in this country, a bigger loophole opens. State parties back in the 90s were sort of the big bad, money wielding monster with the party bosses. And then you got PACs, and then you got super PACs, and then you got IEs, and now it's just a complete free for all, essentially. So I think we need to take a look at the entire system and revamp it. In terms of what Donald Trump is trying to do with this, though, is that it's not policy based. It's not even politics based. It's loyalty based. That's something that you don't see on the Democratic side, at least not yet. I think this has a lot more to do with who did what to Donald Trump during his presidency than it has to do with any meaningful reform of the broader Republican Party.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think you're probably right on that one. Okay, guys, stick with us. We're going to have more after a quick break.